Hey everyone, Dan here. We are well after market close on Tuesday, July 6th. Today we're going to take a look at Palantir. Before we get into it, if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. And also, if you'd like to receive a once or twice a week email newsletter from me starting in August, put your email in the Google form, which is linked in the description below, and I will add you to the list. I'll send out a confirmation before launching the first official newsletter to give you an opportunity to opt out in case it's no longer something you're interested in. So for the time being, just kind of like reserving a spot. And obviously there will be details, supplemental info on some of the tickers that we cover in the videos, but also some additional plays and ideas that I can't really make videos for just based on the time constraints. Okay, so Palantir, just so you know, we cover Palantir every Monday after market close. Because the market was closed yesterday, it seemed kind of silly to do it on a day with no activity, so I thought we would do it today. So this is replacing yesterday. We'll resume Monday after close Palantir videos next week, since the market will be open on that day. So Palantir has obviously had this major downturn. Let's pop out a little bit here and we can see what we were looking at in last week's video. So in last week's video, actually zoom out a little further, we were looking at double channels. Now double channels can provide, like, obviously two opportunities to play the stock, but they can also be an area, they can almost act, it's going to sound maybe a little silly, they can almost act like a type of Bollinger Band. Because if you think of Bollinger Bands, it's sort of like trying to show you areas of volatility, and when the bands are further away, those are areas of high volatility. When they sort of compress and scrunch up on each other, they're sort of like coiling up or gearing up for potential big movement. Now you don't know which way the movement's going to go. Is it going to be big green or big red? But double channels are often the same thing. So we saw this double channel break. Obviously there was a big news catalyst that helped this one along, but I do think we would have seen like quite erratic behavior regardless, even if there hadn't been that news item. Now maybe this would still be in one of these channels. If that hadn't happened, it would still be sort of like winding itself up. But just keep that in mind. Anytime you see double channels evolve or show themselves on a chart, there's a good possibility that when it does start to break one, that it's potentially going to make a strong move to break the larger one. So once it breaks the small one, it's often going to make a big move to try to break the larger one, to whether that's the upside or the downside. So just keep that in mind as it might sort of like help you play those in the future, or know like, hey, there might be big volatility ahead if you want to get in on that play. So for the time being, these channels at this point, now that we've talked about them, are just kind of clogging the chart. So let's pop them out for now. Oh, there's an enormous thunderstorm going on right now, but I had to make this video now or it's not going to come out until like midnight tonight. So this was my opportunity. So if you hear the booms and the bangs, it's actually not the kids this time, which is usually the noise battle that I'm fighting in these videos. It's actually a really cool thunderstorm that I'm kind of jealous that I can't just chill and watch right now and enjoy. So treat this video extra special. If you want to give this video some extra love, you could always share it on Twitter or Facebook or Reddit or wherever you share other stock videos. That would be super cool and I would appreciate it. So obviously Palantir has fallen down into this actually really solid band of support, which we had charted long ago. You see these really, especially these two are super tight price zones, right, of support. But this one here at 24.65 is also really tight. So this is 24.65 down to 24.34, down to just 24. Is this 18? I guess 24.18. The price is right there, so I can't quite tell. So this really tight band is sort of like playing its role, meaning it caught this falling knife essentially, and then is trying its best to spit it back up and give it some support. It did poke itself through at the end of the day today. So there's just a lot of selling pressure given the news last week that kicked things off. We'll get into that in a sec. After hours, you see additional selling pressure coming in. We'll see how real that is. A lot of times those are overblown in the after hours, though maybe some catalyst, some news item came out and I just haven't seen it yet. That could certainly be the case as well. But, you know, pretty low volume today, actually, like relatively speaking. You know, average over the last 3 months, 56 million, just over 28 million today. So folks, you know, relatively speaking, just kind of staying out of this one, it seems at the moment, trying to figure out, okay, what's the price floor here? I would make a strong case for a potential price floor right about where it's at. If we want to throw some additional areas on the chart just to not be complacent and lazy about it, I mean, there are just a bunch of really tight zones here because of all of this like consolidation here before this big move up. Now that it's retraced basically this entire move up, you know, we see it's kind of like not struggling is not quite the right word. Here we would have called it struggling, like it's struggling to get over it, but now it's struggling to fall through it. But that's what you expect, right? Anything that struggles to get through price zone wise on the way up, you should anticipate that it's going to struggle to fall through that on the way down. So really good resistance on the way up transitions to really good support on the way down, and that's what we would want to see happen. Now, that said, yeah, there's just such a tight zone in here, and to the extent to which this just sort of like really clogs up the chart, you know, I'd be more than happy to kind of just put one of these like big squares in here, like a big white square, and just say, hey, here's a big band, a big area of support. I would like to see it get caught in here, and then, you know, sort of like you got caught in a whale spout, and it just sort of spits you right back up into the stratosphere. So, I mean, all of these yellow zones, you know, combined with these blue zones here, I mean, we could just turn all of these yellow for the time being, but this is just one big band of support. I mean, you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 price zones charted here, and it only spans from $24.65 down to $22.90. So it's less than $2 that it's spanning in order to get there. It's what, $1.75. So really tight band of a ton of support. So again, just sort of like keep your risk management in line, figure out what your tolerance level is, figure out where you think some good potential bounce zones might be if you're trying to sort of like catch this falling knife, though it has certainly worked itself into a relatively sideways pattern today. And the last, really just the last trading day as well, so on Friday. So it's doing a good job of trying to give itself some like consolidation support for the time being. So I would just keep an eye on that and know that you have a bunch of potential support levels coming on the way down, and you know, hopefully all of them aren't needed. What I would put is if it comes down to something like, let me see here, there's going to be a couple of really good areas here. What we got here? We got resistance, we got support. Okay, so here's a really good potential bounce zone. If you're anyone looking for like really good bottoming out bounce zones, again, I don't know. I don't necessarily think right now that it's going to come down this low, but if it does, I would look for potential bounce zones in these two areas. You know, if you wanted to be sort of like a really stingy trader and say, I'm not going to buy Palantir unless it gets down to $21.90, you know, or something like that. But you'd probably want to average in a bit above that. Even if you wanted to pull up your ATR indicator, which I know is typically used for Forex, and that's fine, but just like try indicators that are typically used in other areas of trading and see if you can find patterns in which they work for the market, for the stock market. If they do, who cares if they were developed for Forex or for whatever other type of trading? If you can find a way that they work for your trading methodology, use it. Don't worry about the other stuff. Don't worry if it was originally developed for Forex. But anyway, 35 cents right now. So, I would start averaging in, if I wanted to gun for that 21.89, for example, I would add 35 cents to that price and start averaging in there. Now, the ATR is going to change over time, so just make sure if you are using that as your way in which to gauge where you're going to buy in, that you update that limit buy or whatever you have in place frequently to reflect the more current ATR. To the upside, because this movement was so drastic, these price targets to the upside to me are still very much intact, so I would still look for those on the way up. But the most important thing now is for this thing to either start moving sideways in this big band of support or take a really hard bounce, meaning a really nice bounce up off of one of these zones and catch itself some bullish momentum. Before we flip over to the news and data on the RSI side of things, obviously it became very sold off on the 1st of July with the news and the sentiment around the stock dropping. It got down as low as into the teens on the RSI before it started to come up, and then it immediately returned back to oversold. So, definitely having a struggle getting itself up to even the midline on the RSI. It hasn't made it there since that sell-off on the 1st of July, at least not on the 2-hour time frame. On the MACD side of things, we're not going to belabor this. This should be obvious. The only interesting thing here is that after all of this bearish momentum that drove the price all the way down, well under half of a point underneath the baseline on the MACD, it had a bullish crossover, made a smidge of a run up, but now is starting to curl back down, losing the bullish momentum. So we'll see if that continues to play out, or if it's so oversold, so overstretched to the downside that it just has some organic buying pressure coming back in and relieving the bearish momentum of its duty for the time being. All right, so July 1st, if we keep that date in mind, what's up with Palantir stock today? July 1st, ARK Invest, which is led by Cathie Wood, sold a little over 700,000 shares of Palantir worth more than $18 million for ARKW. That ETF still holds 4.7 million shares of Palantir after the sale. So just keep in mind that Cathie Wood and any other institutional investors, any other funds are going to be in and out of positions. Doesn't mean that they have given up on the company. I wouldn't expect that if Cathie Wood was of the mindset of this company isn't what I expected it to be, it doesn't have the potential that I thought it had, I don't think she would be hanging on to 4.7 million shares of Palantir, and I think that initial sale would have probably been significantly higher. So, ironically, then, on Wednesday, Palantir announced it extended its partnership with Latin America's largest media company, Grupo Globo, for 2 more years. So they used Palantir Foundry to improve sales offering to advertisers and to enhance the connection to its daily audience of 100 million Brazilians. So, I would just kind of keep those in mind. Let's see what came up 13 minutes ago. Okay, nothing to look at there. The interesting thing here is there's now a bunch of talk about Reddit getting on the radar once again. It was once a darling of Wall Street bets back in the $9-10 days, but there's a bunch of talk about it getting back on Wall Street Bet's radar again. I think a lot of times the media picks these things up because it's, they have clickbait potential, and so everything's oh, this is now, being widely talked about on Wall Street Bets, but they're just trying to get clicks. So I would sort of temper that with some reality. You could look on Swaggy Stocks, which I think is a cool site. You see Palantir way down here. So, it has all of these companies being talked about, more frequently than Palantir's 1.98% of the comments. So, that said, relatively positive sentiment, 31 positive comments to 2 negative comments. But, I wouldn't necessarily say that this is currently one of the most talked about stocks. Microsoft and Cleveland Cliffs and the QQQ index, they're being more heavily talked about. So anyway, temper those things with, a healthy dose of reality when you take a look at them. Palantir, this is Cathie's ARK. This is, sorry, if you're not familiar, this is her websites, and these are the combined holdings of the ARK fund. If we scroll down here, we see Palantir clocking in as the 22nd most accumulated stock with the fund. And so that's obviously dropped down several spots since that sell-off, but, so it goes. That's, again, what you would expect, I would think. But let's, again, just infuse some reality back into this. Same thing as the hype, the clickbaitiness with the Wall Street bet stuff. To me, this is way, way, way overblown, okay? Palantir had really good news with this Brazilian media company extending their deals, yada, 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 and that's always been the bread and butter for Palantir, is these, additional contracts coming in, these large contracts coming in to use their products, and that boosting the stock price. So if you look here, this purple line is shares that are being held, okay? Shares held. And then this yellow line is the price of the stock. So as the price of Palantir, initially came up, there was a little bit of shares coming in, just over 1 million, and then it had a nice dip and then sort of stabilized, and so they took another chunk, and then as it started to come up, they just accumulated little by little and then shot up big time after this big sell-off. Okay, this big sell-off in February when a bunch of growth stocks started to get crushed, Palantir was like, yes, I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take it. And it just kept taking it as the price continued to dip and they were getting heavier and heavier and heavier into it. So just realize that they got really heavy into Palantir, and look at the growth of the shares held over a short period of time. This is right here is January. Okay, they barely had any shares just as the beginning of this year. All right, and then now they're all extended all the way up here, and this is the sell-off. That's the area of the graph that is the sell-off. So again, stepping back from all the hype and the fear and the clickbaitiness of these types of headlines, that is the sell-off in the vast scheme of all of this buying that happened since mid-February of just this year. So keep that in mind. And again, if you're watching this video, you might have a relatively level head about you, but just know that this dip does not, in my mind at least, equate to this dip. That's pretty nutty. Okay, and just know, to the extent to which this was an extreme overreaction, we should be looking for a price floor to develop at a bare minimum. Okay, where are we working from now price-wise, and what are the levels up? What are the zones that we need to flip from resistance to support to work our way back up? And or what's just the next good news catalyst that's going to come along and pop Palantir up higher pretty rapidly? We know that analysts have always hated Palantir. Right now, by their measure, Palantir is a hold with an average price target of $23. I mean, the news, to me, the news cycle and analysts have always, for whatever reason, had something, that they just couldn't comprehend about Palantir and its price and its valuation and so on and so forth. Cathie Wood was always on the other end of that spectrum, saying, no, this is an awesome stock. As this is dipping, I'm going to buy it up heavily. Okay, so in that way, I understand any selling off from her looks, like she's jumping that ship. But again, this little blip, to me, isn't a jumping of the ship. She's repositioning, she's selling some shares for some reason, but to me it's not because she no longer believes in Palantir. If that were the case, to me that's not what that small dip in the vast scheme of things would relay. Alright, well that is going to do it for this video. I hope your short trading week goes well, and I wish you the best of luck if you're in Palantir, or forget it. No matter whatever you're trading, I wish you the best of luck. All right, well, thanks a bunch for watching and for sharing and commenting below and liking and subscribing and all that good stuff. I really, really appreciate it. I will see you in the next video.